Hello and welcome to Addicted to Lacrosse. This is Season 3, Episode 23. Today is Sunday, June the 5th, 2016. My name is Graham Perrow. With me today, as usual, are Melissa Daphne and Tyler Fitch. Um, Last episode of the season. Obviously, we had the season-ending game this past Saturday. Saskatchewan winning the title I was going to say for the second straight year. It's the second straight year for the Rush. Edmonton Rush. I have my Edmonton Rush shirt on today. So it's the first victory for Saskatchewan and the second straight for the franchise. So it's a little odd, but so yeah, congratulations to Saskatchewan Rush after a very exciting game. Game one was really exciting as well. Came right down to the wire. The final goal was scored, or the game-winning goal was scored with less than 5 minutes on the clock. Game two, the final goal was scored with 12 seconds left on the clock, so can't get too much closer than that. Other than Caleb Toth's game-winning goal in 2000, or 99 was it? I think it was 2000. And of course, there was a couple of overtime games, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Anyway, exciting game. It went back and forth the whole game long. It was tied. This is actually an interesting stat. It was actually tied in every quarter in both games at some point. So it just kept going back and forth. They were talking about overtime because we were down to 12 seconds by the time that goal was scored, and that goal was a transition goal, so it was not exactly expected. So just sorry, I'm getting lost here. I have my documents not being open. Okay.
I've heard
Tyler, why don't you take over?
editing.
Yeah, I just keep adding notes as you talk. Okay. Incredible game, incredibly fun to watch. Some things you don't see, like Zach Greer putting a shot in from midfield, and it's kind of what I think maybe we were short man. But unsettled situation. He's like, I'll just snap a shot on the goal, and it scored. And that was not listed as shorthanded. So yeah, 5 seconds left in the second quarter. So well, I just need to put it on the cage, and he puts it in there. Steve Priolo standing right in front of Cosmo, and the defender as well. Cosmo never saw it. As things like that were going the Rush's way, that's a good indicator that it was going to be their day. The Rush played a better team game. I was looking at the stats, and the thing that jumped out to me was Buffalo had 13 assists under 10 goals, and the Rush had 18 assists on their 11 goals. And we know the last one was unassisted because it was just Cornwall running down. So it was 18 assists on 10 goals, almost the maximum. You can get 20 if you do all the second assists. So 18 to 13 on 10 goals each. A lot more team interaction driving the offense for the Rush. I felt more like Buffalo was just trying to get Dane Smith the ball and let him do something. Mark Steenhouse put in a couple goals, I want to say, but let's see, Dane Steenhouse, 1 goal. And some people like the lefties, Daryl Veltman, I didn't really see any action out of him, not even an assist or point. Banesh, 2 goals. Chad Culp, 3 assists but no goals. So he was moving the ball around. But they needed somebody other than Dane Smith to step up, and they didn't get it. Banesh had 2 goals, but Dane Smith had 2. Everybody else had a single goal. And meanwhile, the Rush had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 multiple goal scorers in the game. So they were just moving the ball around, and that made a huge difference. And let's see what else we got here. Cosmo, the very, very first goal for the Rush was Mark Matthews made a diving goal, landed on Cosmo, appeared to injure Cosmo. There's definitely some aspect of he was trying to sell it to get a penalty. He was definitely slow to get up, and throughout the game he looked like he would have one move in him, one reaction, but if you threw a couple fakes on him, he couldn't ever get up fast. So if you got a fake that got him to go down low, there was no chance of him getting up as you watched him struggle and the rest of the time whenever he did have to go down low, and he would just kind of like eventually pick himself up, but he was not just popping right back up. So the thought about bringing in the backup there would have been very helpful. I think it could have really made a difference. It sucks because Cosmo, he won't really get rattled, but if he's physically unable to go, that's a huge problem. And even in a big game, you might want to take a healthy, unproven goalie versus an injured vet at such a key position. I think that covers my thoughts for right now. What do you got, Melissa?
Well, like you guys said, this was a completely boring game. I mean, we knew who was going to win all the time. It's funny because there was about 5 minutes left, and my husband and I were talking. I was like, what do you think? You think this is going to go to overtime? And he's like, oh, yeah, most definitely. And he's like, well, what do you think? I'm like, I think we're going to have a last-second buzzer beater, and that's going to be it. I just couldn't tell you which team it is yet. And that's exactly what happened. And it was just one of those games where you're just like, on the edge of your seat going, okay, who is this going to overtime? Who's going to win? Who's going to win? You had no idea because both teams were actually playing really well. Buffalo was hitting the pipe a lot. But like Tyler said, there was really good offense, really good defense. Both teams were playing pretty well as a team. There was some maybe, ill-timed penalties taken a few times. There was the shorthanded goal scored by the Rush, I believe, in the first half, which, was a pretty big factor. But it was just one of those games, it was tied at halftime again. And so even though the score was different in the third, it got retied in the fourth. And so it was one of those games that was just, you did not know who was going to take it, if it was going to go to 3 games, if it was going to go to overtime, or if the Rush were going to take it. You really didn't know until that final buzzer went. And I don't think you can ask for anything more in a championship game, especially when we've had some blowouts in the past few years. This was just awesome. I definitely agree. It did seem like they were relying on Smith a little bit, which you can kind of understand when he has been, the top goal scorer and things like that. It's the same kind of issue I've complained about previously with when we had Gary Gait or with John Grant Jr. on the Mammoth, that sometimes because they can be such a pivotal player, the teams start relying on him too much to make those plays, and then it's like they just can't do anything. So that was definitely a factor. Although he was also getting double teamed quite a bit, so that probably didn't help him a little. But it was also one of those, a lot of times you see them crashing the net and getting the goals. This game, there was a lot of midfield shots that were really just threading it through those really small spaces and finding their mark. And I don't feel like we've seen that as much this season, where you had quite as many midfield shots that actually did succeed. So it was an awesome game. Although I am a little disappointed almost immediately after the game, seeing how many fans were already calling for Cosmo to be cut. And it's like, he played a really good game. He had a really good season. Both these teams have nothing to be... sorry, I have a bug. It's mosquito season already starting in Colorado. So I have like a little gnat or something right from my face. But how many fans were calling for Cosmo? And it's like both teams played really well. Both goalies played really well. If this was my, home team, I couldn't be any prouder. And it's like, these guys aren't my team, and yet I'm really proud of how both teams played. I think they did phenomenal. And so it really saddened me to see how many fans were like, oh, Cosmo sucks. He was horrible. He was letting in all these easy shots. He needs to be fired. And, he wasn't. But, it's easy for us to armchair quarterback and say some of those were easy when you're facing some of these top players like Mark Matthews. Sure, all of us could stop those, right? But I think all the players really should be proud of themselves. It was an awesome game. As a fan, I don't think you could ask for more. What do you guys have to add?
I absolutely agreed. The one thing that stood out to me was the lack of penalties. There were a grand total of 12 penalties in both games. So it's almost like both teams just said to everybody, look, let stuff go. If somebody, if you see somebody um, taking shots at one of our players, don't retaliate. Don't go after them. Don't lose your mind. Keep your cool. Um, if it's bad enough, we have to assume that the refs are going to do something about it. If they don't, well, so be it. But we can't be taking dumb penalties and sitting in the box and watching power play goals go in.
Yeah,
And both teams lived up to that.
Yeah, the second game here on last night, there was 7 penalties. There's only one defensive penalty. The other ones were holding the stick on Jeremy Thompson, which you could think maybe did on defense, but you don't. You do that on offense. And Mark Matthews, Chad Culp all got holding sticks. Jarrett Davis, Keto Hill canceled each other out late in the fourth, and Dane Smith, a forward, took a slashing. So the refs were definitely letting them play and trying to not be a factor in this game, and just let the two teams do as much as they could. And the only things that were really clamping down were offensive cheating, not defensive aggression. I think it made for a really great game and lots of flow.
But yeah, that's exactly what you want. You want the refs to just stay out of it and let the players decide the game rather than the refs deciding the game. It was odd with Cosmo going down. But right at the very first goal, it was only a minute in, wasn't it? A minute and 14 in, Matthews scored his goal.
Oh, yeah.
And Cosmo went down, and it took him a long time to get back up. And I don't know how injured he was. I mean, they may not tell us whether he was down for a few minutes, hurt, got up, said, it's all right, I can keep going, or holy crap, that hurts, but this is the championship game, I am not coming out of it. So unless my leg actually falls off, I am staying in. And so that might have been Cosmo's call, and it didn't really seem to be that much of a factor the rest of the game. I think it was you, Tyler, that said there were a couple times where he would sort of make one play and then didn't seem like he was able to make a second play if there had to be one. So if he was to give up a big rebound, then that would have been a goal. So it did kind of look like there might have been something there where he wasn't at 100%. But given how he played, I mean, Cosmo at slightly less than 100% is still better than an awful lot of goalies. Bold, however, was at 100%, and Bold at 100% is better than most goalies. So very deserving of the MVP. That said, the offense was really spread around on both games and for both teams. I mean, they were both kind of on the low scoring side, but in both games combined, we had one hat trick. Nobody else scored. Dane Smith had 3 in game 1, and nobody else scored more than 2 goals in any game, and nobody else had more than 6 points in any game. So you got guys like Matthews or Smith who can just go off for 10 or 11 points in a game every now and again, and nobody did. The defenses were that strong. The goaltending was that strong, and there wasn't one player who was offensively dominant. They were spreading it around. Yeah, it's just a great game, and as you said, Melissa, this is exactly what you'd want from your championship game. You want the 2 best teams. You want the as many new fans as you can get watching this kind of game. And if they watch a game and it's not that exciting and one team wins 15-8, then they're like, okay, well, this National Lacrosse League thing is all right, but no big deal. But when you get to see a game like this is when you get the fans, well, that's cool, when's the next game? Unfortunately, we have to tell them it's 8 months from now, but oh well.
But that was kind of cool for the Rush fans, the fact that they had a standing room only, packed house, and they did get to see the cup raised in their home barn. So as we were discussing a couple weeks ago, does the 3-game series make sense? And while there's some frustrations there, when you're the second place team, there's a bonus. So
I think it's going to be very good for the,
sorry, Tyler,
the Rush. Yeah, it's going to be very good for the Rush fans there to have seen that and cap off the first season in Saskatchewan with the championship. I saw it happen with the Stealth in 2010 when they moved, but the only game they sold out was the last game, and it didn't necessarily carry over. But with what the Rush have built up all season, I'd say they're there to stay, and this was very impressive and super cool for their fans to be a part of and create that atmosphere.
Yeah, the other thing that I was going to talk about was related to what Melissa said about fans saying Cosmo needs to go. As I was just looking at the IL indoor message boards a few minutes ago, and there's a lot of talk from Bandits fans there saying that Troy Cordingley should be fired, and that seems, I don't know, it seems like if you don't win the championship, you're not good enough. Get out of here, and that doesn't seem fair, honestly. And
Who are they going to
if
replace
if
him with that's better?
if Cordingley gets fired, he's going to be thinking, well, what the hell do I have to do to keep a job? I went to Toronto and I won them the championship, and then the next year we didn't win the championship, but I was named coach of the year and I got fired. And then I go to Buffalo, and each season I'm in Buffalo, we have a better record than the previous. And the last season, I take us to the championship where we lose to an awesome team, and now they're talking about firing him then. So, like, accordingly, better get another job where he wins championship after championship after championship, or he'll just get fired. It seems a little unfair.
Yeah,
So yeah, I don't know.
it did seem kind of a little sour grapes, and it obviously I was not in Buffalo when the Mammoth won, but I did hear from several friends and my husband and brother that were there that when it looked like the Mammoth were going to take it, that the Bandit fans started kind of cheering against them almost, and cheering for the hockey team and stuff instead. And it's stuff like that really makes it hard to appreciate your Buffalo when it's like it's just sour grapes, because like Graham just said, going to the championship is huge. It's not like Buffalo got their butts kicked. It was not a 21-5 score. Your team played well. You lost by 1 goal last minute. This thing could have gone into overtime. I mean, it was seconds away from going into overtime. It's kind of ridiculous. I mean, now some of these bottom of the barrel teams, yes, I can see them demanding goalies be fired or head coaches or general managers. It makes sense. They're struggling. They didn't do well. Buffalo did well. I mean, it'd be like the Rush turning around saying, well, you won, but it was only by 1 goal, so we're letting you guys go. It just doesn't make sense to me. It's just kind of that, sour grapes.
Yeah, that's more what it seems like. They got to the final. Maybe the team or the fans felt this is a team that can win the final, and nobody's disagreeing with that, except that Saskatchewan is also a team that could win the final, and they happen to be just a little bit better on those two nights than the Bandits. I mean, it may go down, like you're going to look at the stats in 10 years and say Saskatchewan won that series 2 games to none, but it was far from a Rush-dominated series. Like I said, both game-winning goals were scored within 5 minutes of the end of the fourth quarter, and it was tied enough times. The Bandits held the lead. The Rush had the lead. It just went back and forth. It happened to be the Rush that won both games, but that's a very different series than if the Rush had won both games, 15-8 or something in that area.
Well, especially when you look at the shots on goal these goalies faced. I mean, Bold faced 57, Cosmo faced 54. We're, talking very comparable offenses. The defenses were both clicking. I mean, it was just great. All it took was one ball bouncing just slightly in the other direction for either team, and you have a slightly different score. It was just one of those games where, like I said, you don't know who's going to win this one, because both teams are playing so well. It's going to be just that one team that has luck just a little more on their side, or they just had something bounce just the wrong way or the right way, as the case may be, that made all the difference. I mean, like I said, these teams should both be really proud. I mean, as a fan of the league, I was really proud of watching both these teams. So, way to go, guys. Rah, rah, rah.
I actually remember thinking near the fourth quarter it got to be tied at 10 with just under 5 minutes left when Brownell scored. And I remember the announcer saying, we're almost down to the next goal wins kind of time. And I remember thinking, I can almost see somebody taking the lead and then the tying goal being scored with 5 seconds left or 10 seconds left, and then going to overtime. Turns out that was wrong. There was only one goal remaining. But yeah, it's just one of those things where as you're watching the rest of the game, you think something's gonna happen here that's more than just somebody scores a goal and the game ends. And we were right. I mean, it came down to just 12 seconds left, and yeah, a nice goal by Jeff Cornwall. That's got to be pretty exciting. Dropped an F-bomb or two during the post-game interview. And, I mean, it's hard to blame the guy. I mean, Alex Bouquet got, well, I mean, I think he gave himself more trouble than anybody else gave him for that. Bouquet issued a formal apology to the league and the fans and the team and all that, and everybody's like, dude, you just played your first game, you played outstanding, you won it. It's no big deal. In this case, dude, you just scored the game-winning goal in the championship. I think we'll let it go. So I don't think anybody's overly upset about that.
We will, but maybe I don't know if it'll be impacted by the FCC or not, because I don't think it was on local channels anywhere. I think it would have been on paid channels everywhere, and that's where the issue usually falls in. Whereas I think when Bouquet did it, that was when they were testing with the CBS thing, so it may actually have been on local in some areas.
Okay.
So that could have been why there was a bigger issue.
Okay.
Not positive on that, but I think that's kind of what I'm thinking is why it was a bigger issue, is because it actually was on TV that, you really can't have that.
All right. So I guess we'll move on quickly to, well, it doesn't have to be quickly, but some other non-NLL lacrosse, and I'll turn things over to Tyler here. We're talking about the NCAA lacrosse finals, which you were lucky enough to witness last week.
Yeah, I took a little field trip out to Philadelphia. My good friend I played lacrosse with in college, and all the way back to high school we played against each other, so it's been 20 years. He bought some tickets to the NCAA Final Fours and said we're going, and so I couldn't really turn that down. And took a trip out to Philadelphia and watched Division I semifinals Saturday, Division II and III championships on Sunday, and then the Division I championship on Monday. There's definitely some good NLL tie-ins. I got to see players. Mike Messenger, he was playing in the Division II championship. Ended up losing that game, but he's might be as high as a number 3 pick. And when I saw Tutka listing off people today on Twitter, he's a good kid. He's been playing for Coquitlam in the summer. I think he's a BC kid. But the real star of the weekend was Chris Cloutier, who comes out of Ontario. He's a Kitchener kid, and attended Brody Merrill's academy, the Hill School, or the Hill Academy, which is basically a prep school to groom you to get a D1 scholarship and go help teams win. And I think he solidified Brody's business model pretty solidly. Tied the single game record on Saturday with 9 goals in a single game, and then OT game winner for the title on Monday. And it was pretty amazing to watch that caliber of lacrosse. I get to spend most of my time for field lacrosse watching high school kids play, and you get up to D1, and the athleticism was off the charts. And we thought, oh man, these guys are good. We watched 4 Division I teams play Saturday, and then Sunday was Division III and Division II, and those kids have great stick skills, but they're all 4 inches shorter, 20 pounds lighter, and not the athletes. Some of them just look like fire hydrants out there, and they can catch the ball and shoot well, but they could never run in a D1 game. And I think that was the biggest thing that I took away from the Division I's is they're great and just pure athletes, the best athletes in the game, aside from the guys that then go on to play in the MLL. The same weekend, so 2 weekends ago, or last weekend because it's still Sunday, I did have another little bonus that I want to talk about because it's lacrosse related. We'll talk about the Union Lacrosse Titans, or the Union Titans Lacrosse Club. that I helped coach here in Washington won the Washington State Division II championship. So I got to help coach a state championship team, even though I had to miss the championship game because my buddy bought tickets to Philadelphia. I asked him if he could have bought them for 2 years from now because most of the team is juniors and it didn't really work out. But I've been helping that team out for 3 years now. My neighbor plays on it and all his friends, so I got a good connection to go out there. But it's pretty amazing to see a team of kids who I coached since they were in 5th grade, even when they were youth, to come together and be the best at what they do and celebrate that journey with them. So a lot of winning as the season winds down, and some of it I actually got to be a part of, and that was pretty awesome. So thanks for letting me share that.
Excellent. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And
I got a shirt out of it. No rings in high school,
excellent.
but I got a shirt.
And if the Buffalo Bandits do end up firing Troy Cordingley, they can give us a call, and I'll put you in touch with Tyler and see if he's available next year.
Oh, you're my agent now. You get 10%. That's brilliant. Way to roll that out there.
All right. The next section, I guess we will touch on quickly because there's no way I'm going to let this one go. This is predictions. And we made predictions for each series rather than each game. Tyler and I both picked the Rush, and Melissa picked Buffalo to win the series. Now, this is, of course, before Game 1. We made those picks. And, of course, I was right, and Tyler was right, so we were 1-0 in that series. And that brings me to a perfect 5-0 for the playoffs.
I'm glad we're not talking about the technicalities of how exactly we picked. We just picked the Rush to win. I may have said 3 games. It may have gone 2, but I got the 1-0.
I don't think I actually said whether it was going to be 3 or 2. It wouldn't have surprised me if it went 3, quite honestly, but I don't think I actually made a prediction, did I?
I think we did discuss it last
week.
Yeah, I think we discussed it last week. You said what you thought because Tyler had said what he thought. And I picked Buffalo figuring they were going to take the second 2, and I was wrong. So kind of happy I was wrong. I was cheering Rush the whole time, but there's a lot of players I like on Buffalo, so there was part of me that wouldn't have been disappointed if they would have taken it. But
yeah, as much as I was, I guess I want to say I was cheering for the Rush partially because that's who I picked to win. But I was also kind of hoping for a championship in Saskatchewan just because they've done a great job of building up their fan base there, and what better way to do that than by not only having a great season but bringing a championship in. And so I kind of wanted to see that happen. But at the same time, I would like to see Anthony Cosmo get a championship before he retires. And since he's 38 at this point, he can't have that many seasons left in him, can he? I mean, what Bandit could go beyond like 38? But and I imagine for goaltenders it's a little easier. You tend to see goaltenders stay in the league. I mean, John Tavares notwithstanding, you tend to see the older players are more often goaltenders. So it probably wouldn't surprise me if Cosmo has another few years in him. So I kind of like to see him win a championship as the starting goalie. So that'd be kind of nice.
But kind of adding to your point, I agreed that a lot of our older players do tend to be goalies, but we've also seen some very young players that were goalies cut out because they got back injuries and such. So there is always that potential too. But I agree. I kind of second that. I would like to see Cosmo. He is one of the top goalies for a reason, and it is kind of hard when you realize that he himself has not actually won one.
Yeah. In fact, this is the first time he made it to the championship game and actually played in it. I mean, he won 2 cups with the Rock back in the early 2000s, but never played a minute because he was backing up Bob Watson, and backing up Bob Watson is not the way to get minutes, as it turns out. Yeah, I guess that's it for all we had planned. Did you guys have any other final thoughts for the season?
I can't wait to figure out who the league MVP was in 3 months.
Yeah, I guess that's what they're doing again this year. Though I'm surprised they wouldn't have announced the nominees for that, or the finalists, or whatever they want to call them. I thought they did that during the playoffs, but maybe they'll do that starting next week just to try and keep the interest up, and then give us 2.5, 3 months of nothing before announcing the winners.
I still say that is just the silliest thing that they have changed. It just doesn't make sense to me at all. It really doesn't.
No, I mean, I guess maybe the idea is to try and raise awareness, as they say, um, of the league and get people talking about it again in a time when they wouldn't be. Um, but as it turns out, it's going to be the draft, so we're going to be talking about them anyway at that time, and it's also around the time of the Mann Cup, and I don't remember exactly when the draft is, but it's within a week or two of the Mann Cup. So a lot of the WLA and MSL players are focused on that and going, NNL, yeah, you just hang on a second. We'll deal with you in a minute. We're dealing with the Mann Cup right now. Trying to take time away from the Mann Cup is not likely to be a smart idea. So maybe if they want to combine the awards with the draft and have it 3 weeks after the Mann Cup, sure, go ahead. But trying to do it at the same time just seems like a recipe for disaster.
Well, it's not like they never compete with other leagues or anything, you know.
True enough.
I'm just shaking my
Well,
head. I got no answers. That's good, other than do it right now.
all right. Well, that doesn't seem to be happening. So I guess we'll just have to let that go, and maybe we'll have a couple of off-season shows if there are big moves or trades or team movement or expansion or any of those kind of things. Maybe we'll do one after the draft after we figure out who's going where. But other than that, that will do it for this season. So this has been another episode and another season of Addicted to Lacrosse. For Tyler and Melissa, I'm Graham. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next season.